recorded forever. So, I click that button there.
Let's see.
Oops.
No, it's streaming.
It says video unavailable. This video is private. It's a but over there. It says it's streaming.
Yeah.
So I guess we're good.
I think we're good.
We'll assume it's working.
Cool.
Okay. All right, we're going to call to order this meeting of the City Council Rules Committee for August 28th, 2023. Members present are Stapleton,
Councilor Phillips, Ward 3.
Boy.
Deanna Gwen, Councilor Ward 4, and Steph. We need an approval for our meeting minute from the last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Anybody sign up for public comment?
No one's,
Did we receive any written?
there is some written testimony in your pack.
Yes. Okay.
I just wanted to note, I also, you had asked about an email from Mr. Freitas. It's also, I made a copy of it. I'm not sure if everyone has it, but I'll pass it on. It wasn't actually intended for the committee, but I know you had mentioned it.
Yes.
So the correspondence is the one from Steve Anderson from West Island. Is there any other?
The other is an email from Michael Freitas to me that I think some other folks were copied on. It's in regard to neighborhood associations acting as an appellant in a quasi-judicial land use proceeding. There was a question during this most recent land use proceeding about whether the neighborhood association acting as an appellant had its 10 minutes as a neighborhood association in addition to its 10 minutes as a appellant, and I opted just for one, right, the longer one. We'll get into that towards the end.
Okay.
I'm good. Okay, so I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. So I've got about 4 different items for us to go over. The first one is Rule 15E. It's not numbered, I apologize, but if you go into your first attachment, which is the rules with all the red line on them, go about 5 pages in, you'll see Rule 15, that's public comment.
Yes.
Okay, so Rule 15D, we added another category that folks cannot speak to during public comment, and this is a quasi-judicial land use decision that is on the agenda as an information report. So if you've noticed more frequently recently, when there's been an information, so on your agenda, there's information reports for land use decisions that the planning administrator or the hearings officer or someone has issued. That is council's opportunity to call those up, to have a public hearing at a later date on those issues. In the past, what had happened was councilors would get emailed by constituents or had conversations with constituents asking for those issues to be called up. The mayor or the councilor would make that motion and would just get decided on. It's really not much discussion. I think the practice generally has been, if a councilor wants to call the land use decision in their ward, most councilors just say that you're called and it's voted and approved. There's not a lot of discussion. More recently, there's been a little bit more discussion about these, and I noticed councilors have been calling up items from other councilors' wards, which is a little unusual, but I understand it. What's happening more recently is that folks are coming to council meetings to sign up for public comment to talk about the substance of that land use decision and why it was a bad decision and why council should call it up. It's not prohibited necessarily, although it's technically ex parte. If council calls it up, we can fix that ex parte concern by including that discussion at the hearing. And if it isn't called up, then it wasn't ex parte to begin with because you never had jurisdiction over the decision. So it's fine, you can do it, but it does kind of make the meetings a little awkward. You end up having a half an hour mini public hearing on land use issues during public comment. My proposal is that if constituents want to email you or talk to you about, hey, please call this up, knock themselves out, you can do it, it's not a problem. If it does get called up, that's an ex parte discussion. You'll need to disclose when you have that hearing a month later. But this would prohibit them from coming up and signing up on public comment to talk about that item on the agenda. It's not required. My thought is to make the meeting more efficient and would avoid having these many public hearings on land use at the beginning of a council meeting. But it's totally council's call. It's this committee's call on whether to recommend it to council.
So I'm a little confused because in the past, folks would email me, right? And say, I want you to call this up, and I wouldn't respond because I didn't want to do any kind of ex parte thing, kind of forward it to you all and leave it alone. And so now we would kind of switch gears and say that was okay, but then I would just need to disclose that. So there's,
You had a hearing.
if we had a hearing. So there's that part of my part of this conversation. There's also kind of a bigger discussion on whether or not we even want to keep having things called up.
Right, that's what I'm confused, because I thought we were looking at the possibility of not allowing call-ups.
Right.
Decisions.
That's a code amendment. So you would also need to amend the council rules to say, let's not have council call-ups anymore, or let's limit council call-ups to very specific types of decisions. When we talked about that during our initial meeting, we tabled it for a later discussion, and we can have that discussion now. However you want to do it.
So the scope of this conversation today is more about testimony, like live testimony during the public comment section, not related to an actual public hearing.
Correct.
Encouraging us to have a public hearing.
Right, so this would be limiting like what the public hearing, because we do have a few limits to what people can talk about during public comments that aren't during a public hearing. And this would limit it further to say like, now's not the time. If it's called up, then you could come back, or otherwise just email council and let them know you want it called up.
Correct.
But it would be too late at that point.
Well, if you email council before.
If you email them before it's on the information
Right.
report.
But you would, yeah.
So this would limit the amount of like land use stuff that comes up during general public comments. I'm just thinking out loud so I can process this. But am I summarizing it how you understand it?
Exactly, you got it
Okay.
exactly right. One of the other concerns is the West Salem Neighborhood Association has complained in the past that, oh, John Smith comes up and advocates for us to not call up during public comment and say, please don't call us up, or we'll talk about the decision of the application. And then West Salem will complain and say, well, I didn't get a chance to rebut what that person said. Well, West Salem could have signed up on public comment as well and, spoke their piece. My desire is to get rid of that entire discussion.
Yeah.
Because it's really, whether you call it up or not is council's decision, and whether a councilor makes that motion is your call. But having that extended substantive discussion about the land use issue itself at a council meeting outside of a public hearing, to me, makes it confusing for everyone.
Yeah.
And it extends the meeting, and it's not really necessary.
At first pass, I support this. Yeah, so that's where I'm coming from. But I do think that I was hopeful at some point we would tackle the broader issue of limiting call-ups. It's especially frustrating because, it's hard, it's not intuitive to explain this to constituents or anybody. And even the explanation of it, if it's about a specific issue, then becomes something that if it's called up has to be recorded in some way or acknowledged in some way as part of ex parte communications. I've heard you say, and I think summarize that, with the state law changes, we have, our limited discretionary abilities have gone to paper thin. Like I'm not even aware that we have discretionary abilities. So given that we have no actual impact with the state laws, as they are now, trying to get more housing built and whatnot, I would prefer to significantly limit what is even considered for call up. And I don't know like what it takes to move in the direction of achieving that goal. Because I feel as a city councilor, I'm just speaking on behalf of myself, our role as volunteers is already, there's so much to do with finance committee, with climate action plan, with SCATs, with every other subcommittee that exists, and just keeping a budget the land use stuff, given our paper thin or non-existent discretionary ability is no longer something that we should be entertaining.
So what I would like to do is sit down with planning staff with Lisa Anderson and talk about the different types of applications that are eligible for call-up and say, okay, what do we want to do with these? The legislative decisions would still come to council.
Yeah,
Legislative decisions are multi-area zone changes.
Yep.
Comprehensive plan map changes and text changes. Everything else is quasi-judicial in one form or another.
yeah,
Now, as far as what you would like to call up, the needed housing statutes are the ones that really limit our discretion. So as far as any type of housing development, a residential subdivision, a site plan for an apartment complex, those are the ones where our discretion is almost nil and we can only apply clear and objective standards. Now, under state law, you can have a two-track process. You can have a clear and objective track that has clear and objective standards. There's no discretion, meet them or you don't. Or you can have a discretionary track that gives the applicant more flexibility to do different things, but then also gives us the discretion to say whether you did that or not. For multifamily, we have that. We have some clear and objective standards and we have a more discretionary path that they want. We don't have that for single family. So that's why we have a standard in our code that says that it must, to the extent practical, do blah, blah, blah. That's great, but that's a very discretionary standard. Under the state laws, we can't apply it to a residential subdivision. So we had to throw it out. We had a apartment complex on Cordon Road a few years back that we ended up having to pay attorney's fees on at Luba. It was a conditional use permit application, and that's a discretionary process. Under state law, we can't apply those discretionary standards, even if it's a conditional use permit, which is just astounding to me, but nonetheless, that's the rule. So, you know, we would create a different path for that. That is a huge work plan that planning and legal want to undertake, but it's not going to be available anytime soon. So we're going to continue to have that conundrum where we have residential developments coming through and a lot of our standards just simply don't apply because they're not clear and objective.
what is it, I mean, what is the time frame to, I mean, it sounds like you're working on this process of getting us to a better place that's closer to where I would have a goal of wanting us. What's the time frame?
I would have to talk to planning on that. We're a year plus out.
Okay.
So what I was trying to say is that the needed housing stuff is really the stuff where call-up may not be a good idea because there's really not a whole lot you can do about it.
Yeah.
Now, a site plan for a strip mall, that might be something, it doesn't involve needed housing.
Right.
Now, we need to have some clear objective criteria, but a lot of times it's the traffic and where you put the traffic lights and are there improvements required and things like that. That's the kind of thing that you can actually apply some discretion to, a little bit at least. You know, tree plans, Pack Trust is an example of that, maybe not the best example, but that was a site plan that had a clear and objective requirements to meet. And then there was another layer on that because of the prior zone change. But typically a site plan is a pretty finite process, but sometimes there's additional applications that are added to a site plan, or there's variance applications and things like that. In that case, that might be something that council wants to keep discretion to do a call up on. So what I'd like to do is talk to Lisa and say, okay, let's bring you back a menu of choices here. You want to completely get rid of council review? That's real easy, but it's going to limit your ability to say, oh, I really hate that decision. I want to look at that. Or can we still allow some types of applications? If you're going to get rid of call-outs, my recommendation would be to largely get rid of call-outs for residential development.
Makes sense.
Probably keep some of the other stuff where there's mostly have some discretion. Conditional use variant.
So I would be in favor of a menu of options to consider for this committee. And then we can have that conversation about what do these mean, what we can really wrap our heads around. What our recommendation might be.
And then a data point that I would be interested in knowing if it's available to be shared, like what are the costs, like when we took that case to Luba and then had to pay the other besides attorney fees?
Isn't that like 45,000?
That was a settlement. They were actually very nice to us. I forget what the actual amount was, but they gave us a considerable discount.
Okay.
So 2 questions. Well, 1 point, if we're gonna possibly look at menus as far as, different ideas, we're still gonna need to have a decision about this point because there's still going to be things on the agenda that could possibly be called up. correct?
Correct.
So then we would still need to have this conversation as far as what is allowed in public comment. If we got rid of it altogether, then this is a moot point.
Right.
But since we might want to add some nuance, then we'll need to have some conversation here. And then my last question.
Yeah.
Is if we do move in the direction of kind of limiting what council can call up, residents still have a voice in this through the planning committee, correct?
Right, so most applications, there's different levels of review.
Mhm.
So a lot of applications are decided by the planning administrator. There has to be an ability to appeal those. In most cases, the appeal is going to go to the hearings officer. For some applications, the decision body is the hearings officer, and those would go to planning commission. There's always going to be an ability to do a local appeal. The question is whether that appeal is called up to council or goes directly to council, or goes planning administrator to hearings officer, and after that it's to LUPA. So yeah, if people don't like a decision, there's always the ability to appeal. Neighborhood associations have a free appeal pursuant to our fee schedule. So other folks have to pay anywhere between $250 to $500. The appeal fee is doesn't come close to covering the costs. And even a hearings officer appeal is expensive because we're paying the hearings officer $300 an hour.
If somebody appeals from the planning administrator to the hearings officer, is there an opportunity for non-appellant testimony at a hearing?
I believe so. I believe they conduct a full-on public hearing, so anyone can participate. Now, folks within 150 feet or 250 feet, I think it's 150 feet, get notice
Right.
of that. And then other groups such as neighborhood associations also get notice of that hearing.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there is an opportunity
Yes.
for people to say their piece.
Anyways.
That's what I want to make sure.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that is on in our paperwork today also is there for the fact that it's gonna take a year or more, a year plus, to get us to what I'm hearing some of us have a goal of achieving, which is fewer call-ups and changing the nature of our call-ups. How quickly could this be implemented?
Well, let me correct what I said earlier. So if we were going to create a new land use process with a clear objective track and a discretionary track for subdivisions.
Yeah.
That would take a year plus.
Okay.
To do a code amendment just to eliminate council call-ups or modify council call-ups, 120 days, 150 days, something like that. Takes an ordinance in a public hearing.
So it could be done by the end of the year or early next year, but could this short-term fix be, or short-term recommended change be done even sooner than that, or is that, start to split our attention too much?
This proposed change here
Yeah.
on D, what will happen is once this committee finishes their work, 1 or 2 more meetings, that your recommendations will go to council. Council will decide that probably, I'm assuming November-ish, before the end of the year. I assume this will be in front of council for consideration.
So this could be done faster than the other one. Okay, got it. So I'm still in favor of this, but sorry, I think that this makes sense to me. For this, what we're discussing on paper.
And I think we need to make clear to folks, particularly in neighborhood associations, that yes, you can email your counselors or call your counselors about call-ups. And need to make sure counselors are clear that yes, you can have that conversation with your constituent. I would recommend that during the meeting where you're calling something up, you can say, yeah, I spoke to my constituent, I spoke to the neighborhood association, and they asked me to call them, and now I'm doing it. And then when the hearing comes, you make that disclosure again.
Right. Yeah, I think it'd be really important to have clear the air on that one. It's pretty cloudy.
I just worry about limiting people, the things that people can talk about. That just, I'm not sure the benefit outweighs the risk here in terms of people not having the opportunity to have to say their piece, like maybe they didn't know, oh, I have to do this in writing, and then it's too late. I don't know. This one gives me a little pause.
I understand that I'm not
That's exactly.
a humongous advocate for it. I just thought it was one way to address that.
No, I get it. I totally get the motivation. I'm just not sure that. I would rather fix our structural, what I think is more of a structural problem with the process, which is limiting the types of things that can be called up and just leave this alone. That would be my preference. Like, this is kind of an interim baby step that really, I think might do more harm than good. Where really the issue is, let's talk about the things that come under our purview for call out. That's where I'm at.
Does fair, I'm prepared to be in the minority. You know, like I get it. It sounds like though that the current status potentially creates more work because then you have to like figure out which one of these comments happened, record them if something's called up.
Right, and the meetings are recorded to YouTube.
Yeah.
The meeting minutes will be available, so what we typically do is if it goes to Luba, you know, what we'll do is take the meeting minutes and attach it to the record. And for this sort of stuff, it's happened in the past. We can do that too. It's not a big.
How much, yeah, I guess that's my question. How much staff time does it take?
It's not a problem.
It's not that big of a deal. Okay. I'm just so done with the quasi judicial stuff where we have no discretion. I mean, it's like on the land use.
The type, it's a great example.
Yeah. Is that the one where we had to negotiate the?
Yeah, for tonight.
Oh, yeah, okay, got it.
Counselor White,
Yes.
I wanted to give you just space to speak.
That's exactly what I was thinking, what the mayor just said, is I would hate to do anything to limit people from having a voice. That's all.
My concern is like, what does this look like in practice? Right? Like, is there somebody kind of there saying, well, what are you here to talk about? And if they say item such and such, then they say, well, you know, you can't sign up. Like, I don't know how that works in practice. Or is this one of those things that kind of fixes itself with the leadership of the meeting just by saying thank you and not really allowing questions, or for it to turn into a 30-minute mini public hearing? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's my question there.
It depends on the board.
Right. And I think I'd rather get at the root problem, I guess, than make a more cloudy process.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it very much does. Getting at the root problem is what I was trying to say with fixing our structure, what I think is a kind of a structural flaw in our system, which is let's get rid of the things that we shouldn't be reviewing anyway, because we don't have any discretion on them.
Mhm.
And let's limit it to the things we really can have discretion over.
Right.
So that when people offer their voice, they could actually impact what we do because we have some wiggle room within the law. And the things that where we don't have wiggle room, let's quit pretending that we do. That's to me, we set people up with
Yep.
false expectations, and not just the public, but counselors.
Right.
Like, you think that you can actually change this? This is what I was trying to say in my comments at our last hearing, like, this isn't about what I want. This is about what the law says.
Yep.
I might agree with the counselor from Ward 8 personally, but that's not what this hearing is about. It's not about what I want. It's about what the law says. And that's, to me, that's the structural problem with our system, is that we create this false expectation that we have the authority to implement what we want as opposed to what the law says. So personally, I would like to just table this one for now.
How about we just delete it and if someone wants to bring it back?
Yeah.
I mean, just.
I'm like, what is that? No,
It's so hard because I understand like in the flow of a meeting that it's not helpful to ask follow-up questions and to continue the conversation when something like this comes up. But it just, the sense I get is that people are entering into the record their opinion or their view, which is so frequently just factually wrong.
Right.
Like, it's not a big deal that we could lose at Luba and pay attorney's fees. And that's where, I come in terms of the preferences. My counterpoint then is I would feel more called upon to say like, no, that's wrong. Like, as a counselor.
Totally your personality type though,
Yeah.
right? Like, but that's
Facts are facts.
Yeah.
facts are facts. I totally, and I'm with you, but like, that's also not the point of public comment.
Right.
The public comment is a chance for people to vent their anger, frustration, whether or not they're on point or not. It's a space for them to have a release valve, and we just have to take it.
That's why, generally speaking, I don't comment when
Right.
people do public. I just say thank you for your testimony. I'm not saying, oh, I agree, oh, I disagree, oh, I have this opinion. It's like, thank you for sharing, basically.
It is hard to sit there and take it when
It is.
actually it is not right.
And
Right.
consistently incorrect over the course of multiple points of testimony.
Right.
And then they still accuse us of not listening because, we didn't even get into like, it's just,
Right.
How often does this happen? Like, I mean, I guess I'm new enough that I don't know.
And whenever a big land use thing.
And in your ward to a certain extent,
Yeah.
in Ward 8, which I'm halfway in West Salem. It comes up a lot where there's a lot of development happening and people who are paying attention, right? There's a ton of development happening, well, now more so in my ward downtown because we're having more and more infill. So people are. But in the areas where it was easy because it's flat and, there wasn't a lot of pushback because not a lot of people are engaged or understand their own power in the process. So.
Yeah, it's where people are paying attention and where there's a lot of development. Like on Ward 6. It's not happening so much because there's not that much open land and there aren't any trees that people are worried about because our tree canopy is so limited. So it doesn't, people aren't interested so much.
Right. Okay.
Do we have, are we?
One last thing, the only topic I would even ever consider limiting people's ability to talk is on these quasi judicial cases. Quasi judicial thing is just bonkers, it's not intuitive, and we barely understand it, and we've gotten time from staff, to try to get a sense of what it is.
The existing rule still has a prohibition on talking about pending quasi judicial land use matters. So if there's a hearing coming up next month, they can't talk a public comment about that hearing that's coming. Wait for the hearing, that's what the hearing is for.
That's right.
In general, I'm not in favor of limiting speech, but the quasi judicial thing is just maddening.
Yeah.
Here we go.
All
Okay,
right, so the next one is Rule 22. About 5 pages in from where you were on Rule 15, on the back of that page, down at the bottom. This council communications. Proposed rule states members of council shall not send or forward emails concerning city business to other members of council when the total number of members in the email thread constitutes a quorum. This includes the sender or the of the email and all recipients, including recipients that are copied or blind copy. City staff shall blind copy council when sending emails to a quorum or more of councilors to avoid inadvertent reply all responses.
I would get rid of the word inadvertent.
Okay,
Because I don't, that assumes intent. And we're just trying to eliminate the reply alls.
sounds good.
so clarifying question, I don't want to move on. So when Keith sends everybody an email, just to be clear, and you say all of council are blind copy, that's to clue us in that everybody is on here.
Everybody already knows this.
Everybody already knows this. But then say I couldn't take that email and forward it to Chris with a question about it or whatever, because then
You
that's my
could,
question. Okay,
you could, because then you're just sending it to one of the council.
You can't send it to 5 of us.
right.
Or
Or 4 of us.
Yes.
Basically, don't do things that violate the sequential meeting rules and the
Right.
public meeting rules. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, this just codifies fairly recent, like in the last, I don't know, 10 years of,
Our friend Steve Dingle's involved.
yeah, the folks down in Lake County created this whole case law
Everybody okay with this?
with the changes we discussed. I certainly.
I think next one is.
Is there more to that?
Yeah. What else were you gonna
There was a second
Item
paragraph,
C, yeah.
For council communications,
sorry.
Yeah.
well, just a subparagraph. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed
Yeah.
the
Next page.
So if you do want to send something to the full council, send it to the city manager and we'll get it out to all council. So to the next page, the top of the page is subsection C, Councilor Phillips.
Rule 22.
Yeah, I'm on Rule 22.
22C.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Lynn. So basically, if you want to send an all council communications, send it to staff.
And the staff can send it out.
We'll either forward it out via email in one form or another, or we'll put it on the next council meeting agenda.
Are we good with that?
I am.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
No objection.
Next.
So, I apologize, but the handouts are a little garbled here. Social media is the next one on the agenda.
Last page.
Those are separate drafts towards the back of your packet.
It's the last one on
You'll
their
have
social media rule.
Salem City Council standards of conduct and then draft social media rule. We'll do social media rule first. Previous committee meetings, we had some good discussion about that. The intent is to not violate public meeting rule and just think of council decorum and make sure if you're using your social media as a means of public information, which is great, you have to differentiate basically between your communication and the city communication. So say that, you're going to have a Facebook page, note that this is your Facebook page, not the city's Facebook page. We don't want to be in a situation where we get a public records request for your Facebook page, if you're limiting comments or whatnot. We don't want to get a discovery request where we've got to produce your page. If it's your page and not the city's page, our rights to get into your page and get copies of it and whatnot are limited. If it's a city page, then we're going to have to keep it, retain it according to public records law. So what we want to make sure that people do is just identify it clearly as your personal city councilor page.
So let's say it's what I wouldn't refer to as a personal city council page, but like my what I would say is my political page.
Mm-hmm.
That's still subject to the public records law, is it not?
No, not if it's yours.
It's not.
No.
Okay, so people can't make a public records request for.
I would, if they made it to the city, I would resist that.
Okay.
Now there's a case out of Lake Oswego where a counselor was keeping personal notes during a constituent meeting, and the person made a public records request to the city for those personal notes. The city denied it. He then amended his request and made it to the counselor themselves and said that the counselor is a public body and that those notes are public records, and the district court agreed with the requester, and the counselor had to produce those personal notes, calling the counselor themselves a public body, which I think was wrong. I think that those notes in their act as a public official were city public records, and the city should have granted it to begin with. So if you're taking notes during your work on city business,
right,
those notes are public records.
Right.
There you go. Now, to the extent that you are communicating with constituents and having a conversation with them through your political, Facebook page, I guess there's an argument there that those are public records, but we don't maintain that.
Right. Well, how that typically plays out for me is somebody will send a message about some actual city thing in my political Facebook messenger thing. And they'll say, they'll talk to me about whatever the issue is. Now I will respond back saying, please contact me at choy@cityofsalem.net, as this is not an official city, and then because I don't want to engage in a substantive city business conversation, because I feel like that would make that subject to public records.
Potentially, yeah.
So that's why I say contact me and my email, to then it goes automatically into the city system, and you can search for it if you have a public records request. So that happens to me quite often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the way you're handling it is perfect.
Okay.
Now we maybe want to, and what we had talked about is having a more extensive rule originally for sort of how to maintain that sort of thing, and we kind of went away from that because of some resistance there. But I think what we want to do is provide more extensive guidance to folks on your own personal political social media accounts, as far as keeping it secure from being a public record.
Yeah.
So this boilerplate, in quotes at the bottom, displayed somewhere, is the recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
quote.
Yeah, and not using the logos for the.
Now, I mean, I share things that that I can, on a random, like I'm happen to be on Facebook and it's like, oh, that seems important. So sometimes I'll share. That's still not gonna.
Like a city post.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can link to the city's page, you can link to community pages and things like that too, that's fine.
But somewhere I need to put this up.
Yeah.
No, okay.
But if I have my picture on my profile and I put the city logo with at your service as like a frame,
Probably don't want to do
that
that.
would be bad.
Okay,
And it's really sort of, a sliding scale here. There isn't a black line rule that says if you do this, it becomes a city page. But the more you make it look like a city page, like the fake city council page that is out there.
City council board.
We have a hard time with that because a lot of folks think it's the real city council, city of Salem page. And we get a lot of calls and complaints about it or whatever, so it's not ours, no, we don't do that one. But so the more you make it look like an official city of Salem website page, social media account, whatever it might be, the more you could potentially be turning it into a official city account and be subject to public records law, be subject to discovery requests and things like that.
Okay.
And then we would have to take it over essentially.
Are these rules meant to be guidelines?
Well,
That's the question.
What time frame do I need to get this boilerplate, this
Right.
recommended my accounts?
well, we haven't approved anything, so we're
Right.
fine.
Right,
You could do it today if you chose to.
Right.
right. No, they're rules. I mean, they're not guidance. They're rules.
But like all of our rules, I mean, we are the enforcer of our rules. So what does that mean?
right.
Means that that's a rule,
You get two demerits.
right? There's no,
There's no consequence.
no, not very. I mean, the only consequences are whatever we,
If we had a counselor who goes rogue and creates a city of Salem website and starts doing X, Y, and Z, at some point, Keith Ryan might come to council and say, can you guys do something about this?
Yeah.
Right. We might have to admonish them publicly or, censure them or we have different tools, but I mean, those are.
Eventually we could do litigation.
Yeah.
Who wants to do that?
Right.
everybody
Okay,
good with the,
no.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Shut up, Mayor.
If folks haven't had the time to read through this, we're gonna meet again, so this.
I have no objections. My comments would be that, it's just some technical, I mean, I get that staff doesn't have a lot of bandwidth, but like where on our pages is the recommended options to put this?
under description, probably you have a choice on your, there's a description area where you can put like a narrative. You can just dump it in there.
Okay. I may not remember that, but I'll try. I mean, I get it, like it's a thing, it's a place.
Yeah.
So just when we get these things out there,
Also, when did you have any thoughts?
Not right now.
Still marinating. Okay, let's continue marinating.
And we'll have a whole opportunity when this comes to council if we're to debate it and have more conversation.
It's a hard one because it's a really a new frontier.
Right. And it's their personal page. I mean, mine's pretty benign. I don't use mine that much. I need to, but seeing, if we're gonna dictate, then.
The idea isn't to limit their speech at all, it's just to make it clear it's their speech, not the
Right.
city's speech. So prior page in your packet there is the standard of conduct.
I guess I have a follow-up, potentially unrelated question about the topic of social media. And my personal default is to not engage in conversations about, like on the city council forum page where topics can come up that are, more acutely followed and relevant. Because I'm concerned that could need to be like tracked. And I don't know if there's any way that I could track it or someone else could track it if I'm commenting on stuff that's in front of the city. Like, I think my default is like quasi judicial stuff. Don't touch it. Absolutely. And probably shouldn't touch anything, even legislative things. In terms of like leaving comments, interacting with, concerned community members on Facebook, because I have no way to track it.
Yeah, that legally, it's not a big problem, except for the quasi judicial stuff. There is a few little cases from around the country about, having a conversation in a social media account with a constituent and the requirement to preserve that. I'm not going to be the social media police.
Right.
They'll have to take us to court for us to go after someone's private social media account, and subpoena it and all that stuff.
But there is a recommendation. What I'm hearing is there really is a recommendation, stay away from quasi judicial that's active. Like,
Right, because that's very, very clearly ex parte communication. It can be very problematic that it occurs after the hearing. After you've actually had a hearing and made a decision, but the final order hasn't been adopted yet. And someone sends you a scathing social media post about how wrong you were about the decision, and it's, I got to respond to that. That's, don't do it, because then you have a problem.
okay.
All right, are we to standards of conduct?
Standards of conduct. I'll give folks a moment to look through that.
Now, is this? We don't have like a comparison to current rules.
We don't have a current rule. There are some
There are some
needs, highlights, I would say, in the rules about decorum, right, and not casting aspersions on other council members and things like that. But it's really pretty silent. This was pulled from a variety of different public bodies standards.
Number 6. All of the others talk about council member, because this is the council member standard of conduct. And then number 6 is about the whole body. And I'm wondering if was that intentional or?
I don't think that was intentional. I can throw members in there.
It seems like we ought to put members just because to be consistent and because we're really talking about conduct is really personal, not about the collective.
I mean, I get a little caught up on, a council member's decision to do X. Could be completely not based on merit, right? But a council decision to do X is subject to the rules. You could do whatever you want.
Well, merits and substance is subjective. I think the merits of certain things might be this, and
Right.
Another counselor might think the merits of this. It's about.
So I guess an example would be quasi-judicial land use proceeding. They're going to destroy my property values. That's a common complaint we get land use hearings. It's not a criteria. Can't consider it. So making your decision based on reduction in someone's property values would not be based on the merits and substance. But I totally understand what you're saying regarding, it's the eye of the beholder.
Right. To me, the land use is about, the livability of the community. To somebody else, it might be, no, it's what the law says. I mean, can each argue that?
Right, so that's not a criteria. The criteria are listed for you.
Right.
So in your mind, how would you read that?
I would add the word members.
So council member decisions.
Yeah.
Okay. Just add the word member.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and to your previous question, this is more of guidance,
Yeah.
This isn't, black letter law, thou shalt not.
It's about our intent and about how we, as a group, want to conduct ourselves and hold each other, and the standards we want to hold each other to.
So if how do we hold each other accountable then? And what happens if?
Yeah, first of all, hopefully just putting it out there. But then sometimes we have to remind each other. That's the That's how, I mean, I don't know if there's any other.
No, I mean, in council's past, what has occurred is, you know, the mayor or a member of council, if someone speaks out of order or says something that would, you know, violate the prior rules regarding not asperging someone's character, you may bring it up in the meeting, or you could bring it up outside the meeting and say, hey, you said X. You know, I think, you know, it concerns this rule. Technically, if council wanted to take action on it, you can censure a councilor. I've seen cases in the past with other councils in other states where you actually remove a member. I think that's an extraordinary remedy that I'm not sure we have the power to do.
I'm not sure we do either, but I think here, this is part of my time on the council. My predecessor on council was I'm forced another word, but they censored him or did.
We had a
Encourage
special
citizens.
meeting scheduled to censure, and he resigned.
Yeah.
Immediately before the meeting.
So I think, I mean, it can get to that level, but we've had, since my time on council, we've had where we had private conversations between councilors and the mayor about behavior regarding the rules. Where we said, hey, your conduct is not good and you need to fix it, and we've done several of those, or just in the course of the meeting where people might say that's a violation of our rules. That's,
Yeah, I think you need to, you know, there can be violations of rules and violations of the spirit of the rule, and I don't think anyone on council is going to be attacking other members for rules violations, but you know, just there's professional ways to do it to not embarrass someone. In the same vein, if someone is going after another council member in an improper way, that sort of conduct shouldn't be permitted.
right.
I guess I do have a follow-up question on this concept. I mean, you know, the person that served before you in Ward 6 had some egregious behavior. Unfortunately, they ultimately resigned. But you know, that we're not the only body in the state, and that other bodies have had issues that have come out, and it was found that they really didn't have a lot of solutions available to them for those bad behaviors. You know, at the risk of creating work for a problem that doesn't yet exist but could exist. I guess my questions are, what are, according to our charter and rules, like well, we can censure people, but we can't, there's not a supermajority required to expel somebody.
I haven't researched that. It has happened in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, okay, so
If we got to that point, I would need to dig into it.
And then my second question, which may be like an unnecessary second question, but are there rules according to our state? You know, like, does the state have any guidance or rules for, you know, small bodies like?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know the answer.
Do we need to have a space within some of these documents where there are options, or
Kind
kind of lay out, like, you know, like if there is conflict between, you know, these are your options, you could call it out in a public meeting, you could handle it between you and the other person behind the scenes. You could get another counselor to mediate, right? Like all of those different things are available to us. And then as a body, what can we do? And kind of list the degree of severity as it kind of ratchets up. I don't know those, right? I mean, I kind of understand the basics of it, but I don't know, like, if something really egregious happened, like what the council would do, or what the process would be.
Yeah, like a facilitated, you know, work with staff and mayor leadership on a facilitated reconciliation versus censure versus removal. Kind of spell out, or something like that, you know, I'm not saying that when I.
No, I understand. Yeah, we've looked at various issues over the years regarding, you know, whether counselors are subject to the state discrimination statutes and things like that, and they're largely not, because of elected officials. So the remedy would have to come, you know, for the most part, from council. You know, and the remedies that I'm most comfortable with are the mayor can remove committee assignments. You know, you can publicly censure someone.
What would that look like?
A resolution or a council motion saying, you know, X counselor did X, Y, and Z. We were publicly censuring him. Their conduct was contrary to the purpose intent, and you know, cast the council in a false light or a bad light, something like that. I can pull up that motion. From,
From the previous.
From 2016.
So I guess to further your question, so the council does that, but then what happens?
Nothing. I mean, it's on the record.
It's on the record.
record.
Then the voters could choose to do a recall or something, but there's no, I'm not aware of any remedy past that.
Right.
The ones I've been involved with, we've had private conversations that have resulted in public statements. A public apology, those kinds of things. Because the idea is you want the behavior to change, right?
Right,
You want the behavior to not repeat.
Right.
So it's however, I mean,
the whole point that you just made about like, you know, you've done the research that because we're elected officials, we don't really fall under any kind of protections. Just kind of blows my mind. And I think about a future goal where we are a more diverse group and we bring in people. We're trying to bring in more and more people into elected office that are in minority groups. I think about just them not having any protections. I mean, it feels really strange to be in a space where you don't have any protections.
Protections from fellow council members.
Sure, yes. Okay,
I mean, I guess like towards that and or, you know, even a bigger, like how would we address that if we found that to be problematic? Like what would be a remedy? Do we have to change the charter? Is it a rules thing? Is that implied in the?
I don't
research
know.
you're gonna do?
I don't know the answer, but my guess would be we need to have a charter authority to allow council to remove.
yeah, I would agree that we have to have something more than a council rule. I don't know there's got any authority to do.
Even statute, our ordinance, I wouldn't be necessarily comfortable.
And a charter implies
Vote people.
the people have to vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just on the charter change, not on the removal of members.
Right.
Yeah.
okay, but there's more on the back. So I want to make sure we have, take a moment to read through those and ask any questions.
Can you talk about number 10 a little bit, Dan?
Sure. So this, I was just going to mention as I read number 10 is that we also have chapter SSU chapter 12, which is city ethics. And there's also chapter 244, which is state ethics. As public officials, you're also responsible to comply with both of those. So improper use of office. I got tickets for a friend of mine to attend some city function that wasn't generally available to the public. They didn't have to pay for it or whatever. City manager's office probably got a stack of state fair tickets a week ago. Those sorts of things. You can't use your office to have personal benefit. There's a way to get around the state fair tickets.
I sold them.
But we also, there's also in the ethics chapter, there's a rule about non-influencing contracts. I think it's in the council rules as well, but you can't use your position as a councilor to influence the city contract. So I got a friend of mine that runs a landscaping business. Hey, you get that contract to him, or the OK Shire shop or whatever it might be. Is that?
Yeah, I guess to me, those things are really clear. My question was more about, like, let's say we're having our one-on-one meetings about a particular topic. And I have a strong opinion. Like, hey, no, the draft really needs to say this. I mean, am I not influencing them if I say that? You know what I mean? That was the kind of thing I was, because like, isn't that my job? I mean, I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, the mayor said blah, blah, blah. Sometimes I have to be really careful what I say because people take it like direction.
And it goes to every counselor too.
Right.
Isn't that on staff? Does that make sense? To be like,
not
thank
be
you.
influenced by the mayor telling them to do X.
Right. Thank you, you're just one vote though. I mean, we all know that, right? We need friends in order to give direction, but we can
Right.
have conversations, can we not?
That's what I was trying to
That's
get
my
at. Like, at what point offering my opinion, is that direction or is that influence? I don't know.
Yeah, I struggle with this because we have a council manager form of government.
Right,
you know. Right, you obviously comprehend the influence you can have on staff. I think all of you know that if, you know, when I pick up my phone and I see Counselor X, it's like, okay, all right, now I'm ready. Now that department director, I've been here for 16 years, you know, big deal. The parks assistant, you know, groundskeeper guy, he gets that call, he's freaking out.
right.
And it doesn't matter whether it's mayor or a councilor. What you say can dramatically influence stuff. So my advice to you is, yeah, you're going to have an interest in city stuff that goes on, administrative stuff, but be careful how you use your influence.
Yeah, okay.
And you wouldn't believe how many meetings I've been in over the years where we're working on something and it's like, oh, Counselor so-and-so really wants us to do this. And a lot of times my office and the folks in my office have to say, that's nice, but this is what we need to do.
Okay. 3 more here, any?
Well, can we go back to that? I mean, I'm not naive here. I know that stuff happens. Do we need to work on number 10 a little bit?
Well, so the title is improper influence,
Mhm.
but then the language is, you shouldn't do it, you shouldn't do influence at all, except in a public meeting, so. I don't
How
know.
about unduly influence?
Or improperly influenced.
Or something, yeah. Because this says no influence whatsoever.
That's just not possible, I don't think.
Right.
And thinking about it, I just don't know.
But
how
I don't
it's
want,
possible.
I mean, I
never talk to
agree.
staff
Yeah.
outside of
Right?
council meeting.
Right, to
Right.
me, that's very ineffective.
Well, and that's one of the things personally, specifically the personnel decisions. There is, you know, in the charter, the city manager is the hirer and firer of every
Right.
member, every employee of the city. Individual councilors aren't supposed to influence those hiring and firing decisions, except at a council meeting. So, you know, several years ago, we had a planner who did excellent work. And a member of council couldn't stand that employee and couldn't stand the recommendations that kept coming out. And was hot and bothered, you know, with the city manager to get that employee fired. We got a grievance filed because I was stupid enough to tell that employee to watch her next time she was a council. And, you know, she was a member, asked me and filed a grievance, and she was right to do it. And I was stupid to tell her. And she's still here, she's still a great employee. But, you know, that was horrible. I felt really bad for that employee. It's
Right.
like, and thank God it was one member of council. So just, you know, be careful what you say and how you say it.
But what about, so for instance, there have been members of council who have been involved in hiring processes.
Right.
Even though we have a council manager form of government, is that,
In what context, the deputy city manager?
I was involved, we had councilors involved in the recent police chief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Process, the deputy city managers,
I think
don't know
that,
what else.
I think we had some public process to have that happen.
Yeah,
Okay,
So I think that's okay.
I just want to make sure that like,
as long as it's
not at all.
like a framework.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you weren't dictating the outcome.
No.
Right.
Just participating.
but you were influencing it, certainly.
Right, that's what I'm worried about this language.
Yes, no, I think,
So improperly.
Or undo or something, I think we need a modifier.
yeah, I'll look that out a little bit.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's what I'm interested, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna influence things.
So I guess you add a word in front of influence in the last line. Okay, yeah.
And I'll add outside a council meeting.
Because I usually, when I'm meeting the staff, I'm like, I know that I'm only one counselor. This is
Right.
what I would like. I
Right,
think I
right.
have some friends that might agree with me.
Yeah.
And you know, this is a person or two I've talked to. So, you know, this is what I'm looking for, but I don't expect that they'll.
You know, I think there's a difference between, you know, we're doing a planning process for a park.
Yeah.
Boy, I'd really love to see some, you know, extra sort of amenities over here.
Right.
Versus, you guys are about to let a contract for $5 million to build a widget or whatever.
Yeah.
That don't touch with a 10-foot
Of
pole.
course, of course,
Right.
like who we're gonna hire or what, no, of course.
Yeah.
But that's why I want this language to reflect what they think is.
Okay.
Intent, yeah.
Okay.
Hey, any other comments today?
I'm just wondering if there are place here, maybe it's covered in 3, but where council to council communications, there's an expectation of treating one another with respect and respect for the office. Each of you hold.
I feel like number 1 touches on that a little bit. And number 3.
You know, I was talking about recently about not only just like respect individually, but respect for the body, right? I think 9 hits on that a little bit, where it kind of is talking about how there's, you know, we all may not agree, but then when the vote comes down, then that's the direction that council is going in. So there's a certain need for respect for the direction of council, even if you differ. And by stating that, you can talk about it, but by making that difference, like I was on a radio show recently and I was talking about, they asked me a question. I said, I want to be really clear that I'm speaking on my behalf, not council's behalf in this moment. So this is my opinion as a counselor from Ward 1. This is how I think, right? So having that respect for the separation between, we are a 9-body member, right? But how do we respect that, but also separately our own ideas?
What I've tried to say when I've been in the minority before, like say it was a
Yep.
split vote of some kind, I'll say, well, I was in the minority, I voted this way. But the council direction is blah, 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 and talk about what the decision was. But yet still distinguishing out what,
Mhm.
you know, that I, without saying I think it's dumb, you know, like just,
Right.
but you know, this is how I voted, but this is how the direction of council.
Do you think that 9 clarifies that kind of respect for the body, or does that need to be something that's a little bit more in the nose?
I don't think 9 really gets to what you're talking about. And I don't think it really gets to what Keith's talking about.
Yeah,
I think maybe we could beef up number 3 to get to what Keith's talking about.
I mean, what was, I got,
Keith's comment is about how we communicate with each other.
okay,
I think we
Has
can
that
a little
been-
more explicit.
I'll stop using the phrase half for I'll stop it.
Hasn't really been a problem.
Not
for us.
lately.
Not lately so much.
Not lately, so.
In the past, the things I referenced earlier,
Mhm.
it really had been in the past. And we'd have to like actually hold meetings and talk about it and actually square policies and yeah,
in the meetings we get fiery.
it
I
really,
need to go back and watch those.
Well, some of these were private,
yeah, sometimes the offline meetings.
most of the time they were.
Yeah,
So to address Keith, let me take a look at that. And then as far as communicating council positions, I guess I would push back a little bit, Mayor, that, you know, you can, I think you can speak to your opposition to it as a counselor, speak to your opposition to what council did, and you need to, I think, accurately state what council did, but
right.
I wouldn't say that a counselor must be, you know, can't criticize it.
Oh, no, I'm not suggesting they can't. I'm just saying that's how I do it typically. They certainly could. Yeah, I think the council was wrong. I think it's okay to say that. I think the majority was wrong, but this is the direction. That's the direction. I think it's okay to say that. To continue to hold your belief, but to say this is where it comes to going.
You know, you don't need to get in line and be a good soldier. You can
I think you continue to say.
critique it all you want.
Yeah,
If we had addressed what you,
Yeah, when I think about it, think about in terms of, you know, there's 9 people at the table and everybody has an opinion or perspective and they're all valuable. And whether it's, you know, 5-4 or 8-1, being in the minority is okay.
Yes.
It's okay to, and when we're done, we still respect one another, we still communicate with one another and we move on.
Yeah, I think what I was getting at is that you can disagree with the direction of council, but I believe you still need to have the respect for not only the
The
body, but
decision,
everybody.
right, sure,
Yeah.
sure, when the body's acted, then we're moving on.
it's kind of like once you've made a motion and it gets seconded, it's no longer yours, it's the body's. It's the same kind of concept. It's not about you anymore, it's the body that has taken that over.
We do have a couple of pieces of public comment that I wanted to address real quick.
Okay,
First one, was.
We don't have them, or do we?
Like you have this, you
Yeah.
have, an excerpt from EME's release, no, Stephen Anderson's
Anderson.
email. To me, at Sheriff Stapleton's request, I met with Mr. Anderson a few months back. He had a couple of concerns. So when neighborhood associations are participating in quasi judicial land use proceedings, they have been, particularly West Salem, has been pretty upset about the burden of who has the burden of proof, what the role of staff is in these proceedings. They feel oftentimes that staff is more of an advocate as opposed to a neutral presenter of information, where we will make a recommendation, which I think is staff's obligation. Here's an application. We reviewed it. We believe it meets the criteria for these reasons, and we're recommending that council approve the application. I think in some instances, the neighborhood association feels that maybe staff is being too zealous of an advocate. I don't share that concern, but I understand where they're coming from. To that end, they wanted to be granted closing argument on land use applications.
if they're an appellant, they get that.
Well, not necessarily. Even if they're not an appellant in that first scenario, the applicant gets a chance to do final rebuttal. They would like a chance to do rebuttal in addition to the applicant doing rebuttal. To me, it's like, geez, someone's got to go last at some point, you know. And to me, because the applicant does have the burden of proof, they have the opportunity to say, okay, here's all the arguments and all the evidence you've heard. I'm going to address these 3 points and say, no, they're wrong for this reason, they're wrong for this reason, they're wrong for this reason. Please approve my application because of these reasons. Bang, they're done. What I think they would like is either before or after the applicant does that final rebuttal, they would have an opportunity for rebuttal. I don't see the need for it. It becomes at some point, when do you stop?
Right.
Because even after the applicant's final oral rebuttal, then council goes into deliberations. Council can still ask questions of staff. Hey, how many acres is the property, or where was that tree located, or where is the driveway going to be? What do you think about, you know, that testimony? That sort of communication from staff to councilors during your deliberations is perfectly fine, and I think for the most part helps the process and helps council reach a decision. So I don't think there's any need to stop that deliberation and say, okay, let's give the neighborhood association, and apparently only the neighborhood association, an opportunity to rebut what staff just said.
Yeah.
So I told them I wasn't a big fan of that. They also have a request for quasi judicial land use hearing be brought to the council floor. Oh, prior to a neighborhood association request for a quasi judicial land use hearing be brought to the council floor, council members are allowed to ask questions of staff. I apologize, I'm not giving this justice. Trying to find the proposal here real quick. So this refers to sort of the council call-up stuff, where there'll be an information report for a land use decision on the agenda. Councilors will sometimes ask questions in aid of whether to make a motion to do a call-up, and staff will answer those questions. Neighborhood associations would like an opportunity, or the West Salem Neighborhood Association would like an opportunity to respond to the staff's comments and be available for questions during that period. They're welcome to sign up for council comment, and if we're not going to pursue that rule under Rule 15D, they can sign up for council comment and make comments about that application, about whether or not to call it up. So I think that mostly addresses it. During our discussion, as a concession on Mr. Anderson's part, he asked for additional time for neighborhood associations to present on quasi judicial land use matters. I apologize, I don't have easy access to the actual rule, but neighborhood associations get additional time beyond what an individual member of the public gets already.
Right.
And if they're an appellant, they get 10 minutes to make their presentation as opposed to the 5 minutes that a neighborhood association would have.
Yeah, that's my question. It's like the specifics on that. So, yeah, if they're not an appellant, what I'm hearing is it's 5 minutes. If they just show up as a neighborhood association, which is special because everybody else gets 3 minutes.
Right.
And if they're an actual appellant, then they get the full 10 minutes.
Right.
Okay.
And I think on the next email that I don't think you had, Mr. Freitas had asked, during the last land use proceeding, were they worthy appellant? I'm getting my applications confused at this point. But there was a bit of a debate that they had with staff and with me about whether they get the 10 minutes as an appellant and 5 minutes as a neighborhood association. I said, no, you're an appellant in this case because you filed an appeal. You get the 10 minutes, you get the additional time. You don't get 5 plus 10.
15.
Right. And that's what Mr. Freitas was questioning.
I was wondering if maybe we hold these two until we decide kind of what we're doing with
Yeah.
Let's look at it all in
all
context.
together.
And then can we get Mr. Freitas's email to go with?
Yes.
So we have it available too.
I think we should call
We do.
everything up.
Yeah.
Follow up.
I did have a question about what Mr. Anderson said, where he said, this is opposite the instructional training offered by Lisa to land use chairs recently. And a memo on ex parte communication you authored to neighborhood association chairs.
Mhm.
I just wondered what that meant.
Can I say something?
You bet.
Sorry.
Can I step away? I gotta get a kid to a doctor's appointment. Can you finish
Sure.
the meeting?
Sure.
Sorry, I do hear about this, but I also,
Yeah, we're over time.
Yeah.
So go.
yes, so I gotta go. Sorry, everybody. Thank you so much.
Worries.
I would disagree with Mr. Anderson's characterization. About 6-7 years ago, I provided an email to neighborhood associations regarding ex parte contact. Lisa has presented, iterations of that at different neighborhood chair meetings and land use chair meetings. They have a fundamental disagreement with the city regarding what ex parte communication is. The state law is very clear that communications from staff to decision makers, counselors is not ex parte. They disagree with that. So you can ask questions privately or publicly with staff members and we can answer those questions.
And to clarify or to seek additional understanding of what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that as our city attorney, based on case law and the history of the state and municipalities, your view has been determined correct.
Yeah, it's in the statute.
Yeah. Okay.
Black and
It's plain language.
Okay.
Any other questions on that one? So we'll consider all those when we look at all the call out process. Okay,
You want to take a moment to look at calendars?
do we want to look at it? We need, what time frame are we looking at another date?
We can do it as soon as 2 weeks.
2 weeks is not a good week for me, I can tell you that. So the 19th is pretty good before 1:30 for me.
19th could work.
How's that
Yeah,
looking
that works.
ish? So you want to look at the 19th? I could also do the 20th anytime after 11:30.
20th is challenging. I'm currently slated to work.
Okay. Well, then we'll try for the 19th and we'll go to email.
Yeah, 19th looks okay.
Okay,
I'll confirm with Councilor Stapleton.
cool. So we have any other business, any other concerns?
No, maybe just to recap on what we'll do then, I think we'll take another look at the standards of conduct. There were a few little changes. I don't think you'll have them available to you, but we probably won't go over them again as far as some of the wording changes on some of the other rules. And we'll talk about council call-up and any other business that the committee would discuss, but I think those are the two big subjects.
I think that comports with my recollection too, so. All right. Well, if nothing else, then we're adjourned.